spend a lot of time. It's really depends on different people. Let me know if it's started. Okay, so it's recorded. Yeah, perfect. All right. I am right now in Port Clancy, Haiti, where I'm from. So I'll show you a video maybe towards the end if it works out. But anyways, we have a full agenda. People, I guess everybody's here. We have 2 speakers, and then we usually start with Cloud Foundry Foundation giving us an update. I think Swarna is here, so maybe you can take it. I'll go on mute to avoid any noise around here, but Swarna?
Yep, I'm here. So just a quick update on the summit. The Switzerland Basel registration is open. The early bird registration, I think, is open until July 20th. We have about 108 registrations so far, so it's great to see that folks have already started registering for the event. We had a slightly higher than usual submissions for this year, so we had over 300 submissions for the speaking proposals. So our call for paper announcements, the acceptance, the notifications will go out in the first week of July, I think, or the second week of July, after the 4th of July weekend here in the US. We will also have a first announcement kind of aligning with the same week of notifications, announcing the first set of keynote speaker sponsors and all that jazz. I've updated all of this in the CAP agenda document, so you can find the links over there. We also recently worked on the team foundation, the Cloud Foundry Foundation's values and culture, so you can take a quick look at that as well. I think from the Linux Foundation perspective, they also recently published the open source jobs report. I provided a link here, so if you're interested in kind of taking a quick look at the jobs report, that's available as well. If there's no questions for me, I will pass it back to Dr. Max.
Thank you, Swarna. I guess just a quick, I'm not sure if you mentioned this at the beginning, I was switching things. In terms of registration counts and submission counts, we were good, or do we need to help out everybody to do a push, especially for registration at this point?
I think at this point we're still good. It's pretty expected to see a huge spike as we get closer to the event, and significant spike in the last 4 weeks before the event. So I think we're good. This is an expected trend. We are not significantly lower or higher. And the speaking proposals, last year we had about 280 or 290 submissions. This year we had 304 or 305. So it's trending in the right direction. We had a lot more interest this time, and we had that 1 week extension definitely helped the community submit a ton of more sessions as well. So it's so far things are really good.
Cool. And they announce for which talks get accepted.
Yeah, that follows the 4th of July weekend. So I think it's the week of July 6th or something. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but the notifications will go out to the folks that submitted that right after the 4th of July week. And we also are lining up our announcement of first set of sessions and keynote speakers and kind of overall summit news for that week as well.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Perfect. I don't know if anybody has questions. I don't see anything on the chat. So we'll switch to, I think, Yui, if she's here. I don't see her at Pivotal. I see Danny. Danny, do you want to, I saw Dimitri join also. Do you want to give us an update on Bosch? Maybe we go with Bosch first, and then we get to Eric after that for runtime. Any highlights, anything you want to mention, Dimitri? Unless he dropped. So maybe Danny, do you want to update us on Bosch? Nothing new?
Dimitri can go ahead.
Say that
again.
Hey. DK is it? We can hear it now.
Well, we've been, I think, continuing to work on some of our existing tracks. Toronto has been hard at work at removing registry and updating some of the CPI related machinery to work with CPI v2. Hopefully that simplifies certain things. We've also been fixing a few problems that we saw with 266 release related to some of the links refactoring and whatnot. I think aside from that, just trying to catch up with all the things. We have lots of PRs that we still haven't merged yet, so we're slowly kind of going through that queue. We've been doing also some fixes to Xenial stem cells and polishes. I think recently we've published 81 Xenial stem cell version that excludes ZFS. So that's more or less a kind of a stable artifact that we feel pretty confident with. So we're pushing more teams to test against Xenial stem cell, and that way, hopefully, shortly, Foundry deployment repo will start adopting that as a default stem cell. That's pretty much it.
Cool, thanks, Don. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Nope, I don't see anything on the chat. When you say waiting for more tests, do you mean that you wouldn't recommend people to go in production with this, or would you say test it and then if it's good for you, just go for it? But what's your recommendation on this version?
I think this version is fine. I was just saying that Foundry's deployment repo hasn't switched to it by default yet, but we're trying to have all the teams who contribute to that repo test it out, see how it goes.
Cool. All right, thank you very much. Unless there are any questions for Dimitri or Bosch related, we'll switch to Eric or Yui. I didn't see her join, so I don't know if Eric, you can give us the update for runtime.
Hey, Dr. Max, sure, I can comment on a few things. Dimitri mentioned Xenial stem cells, and I know a bunch of the core CF runtime teams have been testing against that. In fact, I think the Diego team just switched its Concourse CI over to that, as well as some of our test environments. We haven't seen much that's surprising so far, which is good news. Some other things that are on the horizon, I know Cappy's making good progress on allowing rolling app updates through the V3 API. And so I expect they'll have something that's ready for beta level feedback pretty soon. So definitely stay tuned to the runtime PMC notes for updates there. And Zach may also have something for the mailing list when that's ready for some mileage. I also know the routing and container networking teams are proceeding with various aspects of Istio and Envoy integration. I think the routing team is continuing to make incremental progress supporting coordination with the Istio pilot and Envoy components for the new routing tier and routing control plane. And container networking is also working on various options to route internal traffic through the envoys to take advantage of some of its client-side load balancing capabilities. And then also one thing that Diego and Garden have been working on is getting all the details right to support rootless containers with all of the configuration around containers that is now the default in CF deployment. So I think there's one last aspect around how container networking works with rootless containers that the Garden and container networking teams are working out. But then hopefully this is something that we can start moving real CF environments to. So I think those are the highlights in the past month or so. Just as far as kind of core application and routing features of the CF app runtime are concerned.
Cool. Thank you very much.
I can add a little bit for container networking, just because they kicked off a new track yesterday. So they just incepted on dynamic egress, so you don't have to rebind your applications when ASG change, and also configuring policies to destinations rather than to individual IPs. So that's something they're working on. I'm sure Usha will have something about it in the PMC notes.
Excellent. Was that Usha?
No, it's Rupa.
Rupa. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Okay. Any questions on runtime or related? No? Guess everybody's waiting for the 2 talks. That's good. Let's see if Matt Keene is here to give us an update on Open Service Broker API. No, I didn't see him, so maybe he'll join after. So for extensions, I'll switch there until Matt, I guess, jumps in. The key thing is we have a talk today on, well, we have 2 talks related to extensions. First is the Stratos update, as you know, that was accepted earlier this year, or I guess last year. And then we have Project BlockHeads. And the reason they're also presenting is because they're going to submit it as an extension. So everything you're going to hear from Nima is going to be submitted to be included in extension. So the proposal will come out, I guess, sometime today. We missed the call last month due to various reasons, but we'll have one this month. So I think if you want updates for the other projects, look at previous month's updates and then wait for us to announce it, or join next week. It's going to be Monday next week. So that's it for extension. I don't know if you guys have any questions so far. No? Okay, so we'll try to give as much time to the 2 presenters. Part of the reason I asked them to present were because I think somebody was asking if there's any updates on the Cube CF integrations. I don't know if somebody has a question about that, just generally, but there's no plans to add them yet, since none. I mean, I guess one of them is already part of Bosch and one is part of the runtime. So I guess those updates will go through there, and then of course people can ask questions. But I think Chip has his weekly or bi-weekly calls for Cube CF integrations. Maybe next time we'll have more to talk about. But so today we have 2 presentations, I think really important ones. So first one is going to be an update on the Stratos UI. So people that don't know anything about Stratos UI, especially people listening to this on the internet, it's basically a full-blown UI for CF. It pretty much gives you a UI that you can now, with your small company or even bigger companies to use for Cloud Foundry. I know we at IBM have looked at it seriously, and I think I don't know the details of where it's being used, but I know it's being used various places. And of course, SUSE is the one that submitted it, and it's they're continuing development, so they're going to tell us about version 2. The one thing I can tell you is when I used it myself in Boston, I literally didn't have much experience besides seeing what Neil had, and I could put it together on my iPad and iPhone in a few minutes and get it working. So very excited about this. And then after that, we have the BlockHead project, which is a blockchain Ethereum smart contract. So without taking too much of their time, Neil, if you want to, I guess, unmute, and then you have to share your screen also. And you have about 25 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. Let me share my screen. Let me see if I can find the right tab. Okay, good. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it. Good.
Awesome. Alrighty, so Dr. Max asked me to give you an update on Stratos. So I think some of the history's already been gone over, but really briefly, we've been developing this at SUSE for some time. And then I think last November or so, I think I did a demo on this very call, and we submitted it to the extensions framework, and it was approved in December. So pretty much, I think since January, we've been operating as within the CF extensions PMC. All the repo has been moved over to the Cloud Foundry incubator GitHub. And our focus, I guess, for the last, almost 6 months, has been on this version 2, which is what I'll run you through today. And if you've not seen it before, hopefully there'll be something there that will whet your appetite and maybe get you to go take a look. If you've seen it before, then hopefully you'll get an idea of where we're heading. But the main focus on the V2 release has been to kind of move us from the older AngularJS framework to the newer Angular stack. So hopefully we've got something that will carry us forward for a bit longer. We've also taken the opportunity to kind of refresh the UI. So we're using sort of material design, and we're using a kind of open source widget set for that rather than our own. We've tried to kind of improve the layout throughout and make it easier to find the information you're looking for, improve some of the visuals in various places. We've got some improved support for services, which I'll showcase, and that's something that we want to move forward and improve as time progresses, and certainly as the open service broker stuff improves as well. And there are also lots of other improvements throughout the UI around being able to redeploy apps and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully I'll showcase some of those. So where we're headed is we're doing this V2. We are currently have a kind of a beta version tagged, and we're working hard to get a release of this for July, so next month. We have the V1 is still there, so you can go to our GitHub page, which is hopefully there. You can see Cloud Foundry Incubator Stratos. There's a ton of documentation, roadmaps on there, our planning, our weekly updates is all there. You can take the V1 off master or the V2. What I'm showing today is the V2, so hopefully you can see my login screen. So this is authenticating against the UAA. I'll skip that screen while it loads, actually. One of the things about Stratos is we support being able to manage multiple Cloud Foundries. So obviously, as Dr. Max said, this is a web-based UI for managing Cloud Foundry and for developers and administrators to achieve their tasks through a visual UI. We let you register and connect multiple Cloud Foundries if you wish. So here I've got 3, only 2 are connected. I can connect the 3rd. So again, we only use the public V2 API endpoint and the SSH and the log stream to connect to these. So you don't need any access to any internals for your Cloud Foundry. You just need to point it at the public API. You can go in, you can connect with your credentials. So you might have different credentials for each of these. Obviously, you probably will. But you might be an admin on one or a developer on the other. So you can go in and connect in. So here I'm just going to connect up my local PCF dev. So all 3 are now connected. An administrator can actually register those endpoints, so I won't do that now. I've pre-done that to add them into the system, but then each user that comes in is able to connect to those with their own credentials so that they get the right level of access against each of those Cloud Foundry deployments. So that's endpoints. The kind of key focus starting at the top is really around applications. So this is what we call the app wall. Took a little while to load there as it's gone out to all 3 of those Cloud Foundries. It's retrieved all of the applications. Obviously, we try to be reasonably intelligent with the API calls we make. There's quite a lot of information to get around orgs and spaces and domains and routes and all of that stuff. So we try to make sure we only make those when it's absolutely necessary. It will cache those results within the UI so that as you move around, it will only go and fetch things that it hasn't already got, or if you choose to refresh, because obviously those things can take a bit of time. So as I've shown, I've got 3 Cloud Foundries connected. I can look at all my apps here in this card view, switch to a list view, do sorting by the various columns, fields. I can refresh, I can filter down to only see my apps in the various Cloud Foundries, and again I could even go down to a particular org space. There are no applications in that org. So I can jam around and look at my apps. Within a given app, I can drill down and get a kind of an app view. And again, we've switched in V1 from how else into this more of this card layout. So we've tried to put less on the screen. It may look a bit busy, but there's less on here in terms of, we used to have routes and instances, I think, on this view as well. So we've tried to space things out a bit more, and we've moved instances and routes into their own tabs that you can see across the top. So this gives you a summary of the app as a whole. We've tried to give a bit more information here than we used to have around uptime and the average and minimum across your app instances, the number of instances you've got. And we've used these status indicators on the cards to try and draw you to where there may be an issue you need to look at. So here it's all green, but in other cases it could well be red or orange. Build pack info, and I'll come on to deployment info shortly. I've got links to the Cloud Foundry and Organ space it's in. So if you've got multiple Cloud Foundries registered, you can easily jump in and go to the appropriate place to look at other apps and information within that space or Cloud Foundry, and I'll show that in a sec. So as I've mentioned, we've moved things like instances into their own tab. Again, we're using this card layout, so I can get more simple stats, I guess, against the instances. I can see the status of the instances. It's easier now to kind of scale the app. So that will go and scale the app and tell me it's scaling, and I'll see those starting. If any of this is crashing, then you'll get nice status. If any of them is going over its memory disk or CPU, you'll see orange or red as it goes over various thresholds. So that's various improvements on V1. Routes broken out here. This, as you'd expect, you can view and manage routes. You can add a route. Don't think I have a TCP domain. If I had a TCP domain, then you could create a TCP route as well. So pretty much basic stuff to be able to create some of this stuff. A log stream, you can stream that in the UI. It's just the app log stream as it goes. Services, this probably doesn't have any bound service instances. You would see them here. I can add a new one. I'll show that from elsewhere in a second. You can see the variables for your app. You can see the recent events. You can obviously add variables on the variables page. So that allows you to manage most things around your application. You can go up here, you can edit the app, so you can change its name. From here, you can also scale up or down, change the disk quota, enable SSH, that kind of stuff. I can choose to delete it. If I was to do that, I can select some of the dependent parts of the application if I want to delete those as well. So this has 3 routes bound to it, so I could also choose to delete all of those routes at the same time or choose not to. And equally, if I had service instances, I'd see the same sort of thing. Restart it or just stop it. So quickly going back, one of the other sort of things we have is the ability to deploy an app. So this is the sort of same as CF push, but from the UI. So we support letting you deploy from GitHub or an arbitrary Git URL or an application archive file or folder that's local on your system. Maybe I'll try one of these for fun. So I've chosen an archive file. I can choose an app. So I've got GoM app as a zip. I can select that. It will quickly look at what's in there, or actually won't look what's in there. I'll look at the file, give me a size, notice it's a zip. I hit next. It's very quick. It's only uploading 70K. That's uploaded them to our back end, and I'm ready to do a deploy. So hit deploy, and it's going to do the equivalent of CF push. So we do use the CF CLI code as part of this. So we're not doing anything different to what CF push would do. It's exactly the same code path. We're just invoking it through our back end. And I can either wait for that to go or go take a look at that app. So you can see while it's deploying, it's in staging status. And because I already actually had GoM deployed, this is effectively a redeploy. So you can see I've already got some information here. And you can see the deployment info. It tells me that it was deployed from a local file. I can go back and real quick, I'll deploy from GitHub. So let's pick and I can change the branch. If I deploy from from GitHub, I can open the project in a new tab just to make sure it's the right one. Now this is different in V2 than V1. I can choose a particular could use a particular commit to deploy from, so I could go back a commit to deploy from there. And then once it's actually started to deploy and we've got the application, it should light up. Or maybe not in this case. Well, I close. So I should see it here. There it is, CF Quick App. I think it was the one I did. Okay, so that's deploying. What I wanted to show you was when I go through GitHub, you can see there's deployment info here, and we've also added a GitHub tab. So this gives you some information about where you deployed it from. What we do is we add a variable to the project that we can read back and use to populate this. So I can see where this was deployed from, and I can also then look at the commit list, and if I wish to update it, I can choose to deploy from that newer or later commit. So just some tools to make it easier for developers to maybe push apps directly from GitHub or from a local archive. We do little things like provide CLI info that's contextualized based on where you are in the UI. In other words, it will fill out the appropriate bits depending on what you're looking at. So it's just there to help people. I think that's probably it for apps. As you can see, we're doing the hopefully the most useful stuff. Then the sort of stuff we added more recently is around services. So we've split out the marketplace, which obviously service catalog from the actual services or service instances. So here we're presenting a card view. So this is all fairly new and different to what's in V1. So you can see all the services in the same way that you can see all the applications, and these are aggregated across all of the Cloud Foundries. So I could choose to look in a different Cloud Foundry, or I can look in across all of them, and I can obviously search by name if there's a particular one that I'm looking for. You can drill down into those, get a bit more information. I see how many service plans they have, see if there are currently any instances of that service. You can also go into service instances and see all of the service instances that you have across all of your Cloud Foundries. Again, you can filter down just as with applications to look at a Cloud Foundry org space or do a search. These are all junky test ones, but from here you can edit or delete a service instance. You can go up here and create. Let me do it from here actually. You can, from the marketplace, you can create from various places. So from the service instances, you can create one from here. You can drill down into one if you like, and create one, and so you won't have to select which service you're interested in. So I can pick one. I can see all the plans. It's a bad one because it's not free. But I can then go through. I can choose an app to bind to it optionally, and then I can create it. So maybe if I chose one like simple autoscaler app, service, and pick. Ooh, bugger. Oh, there's no space in that one. Yeah, but I don't have to bind an app. You can give it a name. And I should see the test service instance, and it's got no applications attached. So this whole UI around the marketplace and services is new, as I said. In the previous V1, we had some basic stuff, but it really was very basic in comparison to this. This is stuff we want to build out further as we move beyond 2.0, but it's hopefully a good starting place. And then lastly, we have a bunch of UI around Cloud Foundry itself. So with most of these things, if you have only one Cloud Foundry connected into the system, we will optimize the UI a little bit so you won't see a selection page like this. But I have 3, so if I click on Cloud Foundry, I get to see all 3. I can pick one I'm interested in, and we get this kind of view. So again, this is different to V1. We're trying to do the same thing of using the cards to highlight some of the more important information and bring that to people's attention. So you kind of get this summary view showing you the basic information, maybe some of the recent apps that were updated with their status. I can shortcut, click through these cards to get me to, say, the orgs tab to see all the organizations I've got. I can drill down into an org and see all the spaces, same kind of thing, see where I am against my quotas, see what my role is. I can look at the spaces. I can delete or edit spaces, click into the space itself and see the same kind of view in terms of my quota usage for a space. And then when you get down to the space, you can also look at all the applications and service instances. I picked a bit of a junky one here, but you can view those across just that space. It's a slightly different view for that. The other thing we've added in V2, which we had in V1, but I think we've done a better job this time around, is some of the user management, or at least being able to assign user roles across the orgs and spaces. So you can go and you can pick a user, you can choose their roles across organizations and then the spaces. So it makes it much easier to do that. And I think what we do that's better than V1 is we show you this kind of summary view of what is going to happen. You know, you're going to add these roles to this user, and if I was removing them, I'd see removal. And then when I hit apply, you would see it whir away and do them. And it will make sure it does them in the right order. Some of these have to be done in a particular order, so it takes care of that for you. And you can manage the users from various places, again, contextualized to whatever you're looking at, whether it's an org or a space. So this gives me a kind of a view of all of the users across my Cloud Foundry. Firehose, because I'm an admin, we can look at Firehose and we can filter that down by the rest. Different types of information coming in. We can then look at some basic stuff like the feature flags. Again, we can search and check the build packs we've got, you know, which stacks. So again, this was SUSE's Cloud Foundry, so we have OpenSUSE, and we can look at the security groups. So we don't let you do any editing of these yet. That's stuff we could add in, but for now, we at least give you the kind of the ability to read or view those from the UI. And it's worth saying that with all of this, we do kind of retrieve the permissions from the kind of back end for the Cloud Foundry you're looking at and make sure that what the user is presented with is only applicable for the permissions they have. Obviously, the API would gate them from not being able to do stuff they can't do, but we make sure that what you see in the UI is only what you're allowed to do. So hopefully that was a fairly whistle-stop tour of the UI. We're getting this in place, as I said, for V2, to at least do what V1 does, which it does, and it does a bunch more as well. And then we'll be really moving on to looking at the next set of functionality to add in. So we're trying to get to kind of, you know, sprintly 2-weekly releases where we'll be doing point releases to kind of really steam along. We're starting to see more kind of uptake, as Dr. Max suggested. So we've got lots of people from other organizations, which is great, coming on board, either just to use the UI, which we love, and in some cases doing PRs and helping us out, which is great too. So if you are interested, go take a look at our GitHub page, give us a star, join our Slack channel. So we have a Slack channel in the CF Slack deployment hash Stratos. So join that and you'll find the team. So if you've got any questions for me or the team, then find us there. We do a monthly sort of status call, which is advertised in that Slack channel as well, where we kind of go through this kind of stuff of what we've been up to and do demos if appropriate. And we publish sort of weekly status updates as to what's been happening in the team. So hopefully that was useful. As I said, if you've got any questions, reach out to me and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I don't think we have too much time for questions, but if there's a quick question. All right, thank you, Neil. I have no, I mean, this is amazing. Every time I see it, it gets better and better. And it also works on your iPhone, guys, if you want to try to use it there. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so Nima, maybe if you can unmute yourself, say something, and then you can share the screen. I'm gonna put myself on mute. So Nima will show us BlockHead, and he'll talk about the project.
Sure. Do you guys hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let me just share my screen and then we can get to it. Hopefully I'll be able to squeeze in everything that I've been planning to present in the remaining time. All right. Do you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we see your screen. Go for it.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to present Project BlockHead. And for those of you who don't know, Project BlockHead was in fact like a project that we did for the hackathon in CF Summit Boston. And the initial idea was that we wanted to quickly enable people who use Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes to also benefit from blockchain and deploy their applications and integrate it with the blockchain. And after the hackathon, there was quite a lot of interest from people wanting to know how these things work. And so as more people got interested, we thought that we could submit the project as a CF extension project and hopefully continue working on it and making it available for the community to also experiment with it and give us feedback. So let's get to it. How do you code for blockchain? Like if you want to deploy like a blockchain application, you need to do quite a bit for your application to be up and running. First of all, you need to write contracts and contracts for especially for blockchains that are based on EVM or Ethereum virtual machine needs to be written in a language called Solidity. And if you have your contract written, then you need to bring up a standalone Ethereum node, and then you have to create an account on it, and then you have to deploy your contract, you have to compile it and then deploy your contract, and then get the interface for the contract back, integrate it into your application, and only then you get to a point where you can actually start developing your node application or whatever type of application that you want to deploy to blockchain. So these steps are actually complicated, and there's quite a bit of knowledge that is required for a typical deployment developer to have in order to be able to deploy applications to blockchain. So what is a Project BlockHead? With Project BlockHead, what we tried to do was to have a solution for all these challenges that I went over earlier. So we wanted to enable Web3 application developers to be able to more easily develop applications for Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes, and integrated with blockchain networks. We wanted to simplify and manage the lifecycle of Ethereum nodes or blockchain nodes as a whole. And also we wanted to be able to manage the lifecycle of contracts that you deploy to these nodes. Also, we wanted to make it available for production so that you can deploy and integrate with the public blockchain, and then also deploy your application in production and benefit from all the good things that platforms like Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry offer in terms of scaling your application and debugging your application and all sorts of good stuff that we have with these platforms. Also, we wanted to make Web3 application development and blockchain application development agnostic to the blockchain network. So right now, as I mentioned, it works with Ethereum, but that doesn't mean that it has to use Ethereum. It can and it should potentially down the road support any blockchain network. And your nodes for any blockchain should be able to connect to the rest of the nodes and basically help you deploy contracts. Okay, so the way we did it was that we developed a service broker, and BlockHead is a service broker. And through the interactions with the service broker, we actually allow for management of the lifecycle of a node and a contract. So how do you start a standalone blockchain node? When you create a service in BlockHead, it actually brings up a node for you. And it also, as it brings up a node, it creates a contract, and then it makes that contract available for you. Sorry, I mean an account. It creates an account and makes that account available for you. And then if you want to deploy a contract, all you need to do is to bind your service with the reference to your contract into your blockchain node. And when that happens, your contract gets compiled and then gets deployed into the node using the account that was created in the previous step. And then it provides all the information for how to interact with the contract as VCAP environment variables to the application. So the application can actually bind to it and start using it. Okay, so that was a very quick rundown. Because I'm short in time, I'm just going to jump into the demo and show to you guys how this thing works. So hopefully you still see my screen, and hopefully the demo gods are going to be with me and this thing is going to work. So let's have a look. If we look at the number of VMs that I've deployed our broker side to side with Cloud Foundry. So you see I have all the Cloud Foundry VMs running, but I have these 2 extra VMs running for the Docker broker deployment, which is like the Docker VM and the Subway. And one thing that I forgot to mention is that we built the initial version of BlockHead broker on top of the Cloud Foundry Docker broker, service broker that was initially submitted to the Cloud Foundry community by Dr. Nick and his team. So the Docker broker, in fact, brings up a Docker container And then we use that Docker container to bring up an Ethereum node and connect that Ethereum node to the network. So on the right, you see that I'm connected to that Docker VM in our deployment, and this is where the Docker engine is running. So initially, if I run Docker PS, no Docker container is running here, which basically means that there is no Ethereum node running either. So if I look at the marketplace for my Cloud Foundry deployment, I've already created the marketplace and I've already added my service. So you see this, the Ethereum service is available and the plan is free. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create an instance of that service and I'm going to call it simple. So when that happens, and once the service gets created, if I go back to the Docker VM and do a Docker PS, you see that now I have a Docker container running. And if you're familiar with the Ethereum node, you see that the ports for the get node, which is the Ethereum node implementation in Go, are exposed on the host VM. So let's actually see what's happening with that. Docker container. So connect to it and tail the logs. It's cool. Okay, so you see it's started an Ethereum node. Right now it runs it in dev mode, and I explain later on why it's in dev mode. But you see that it started the mining operation. And so on the left, I'm going to push an application, and it's a Web3 application that we've already deployed. So I'm going to do a CF push. It's a simple polling application, basically, like just for voting. So I'm going to push it in a node start mode. And then once the application is pushed, I can bind it to the service that I just created. And then we'll see what happens. Cool, the application is being pushed. Laptops gets a little bit slow when I'm sharing my screen on Zoom, so bear with me here as this thing.
And this all also works on Kubernetes, right? Like in terms of deploying the broker and using it.
Yeah, the broker can be deployed and can use Kubernetes as well. It cannot be deployed on Kubernetes as a standalone because there are some complications with Docker sockets and stuff. But we're working on making it actually be fully deployable on Kubernetes. But you can deploy it side by side and integrate it as a service into Kubernetes, and you just use it with Kubernetes applications too.
Cool. And as we're waiting for dead time, I know we chatted on Slack that you're going to submit the extension today, the proposal. So we're going to try to fast track that so that we can, hopefully people that are interested can join the project. Is that the plan?
Yeah, that's the plan. And we have the project proposal already ready. So hopefully after this talk, I'm going to share it with everyone. And, feedbacks are definitely welcome. And you can go through it. And we're more than happy to open it to the community and let everyone contribute to it. Okay, cool. So it looks like my application is pushed. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bind the service that I created initially to the application. And as you can see, the way I pass in a contract is through the contract URL. So this contract URL poll.sol is a Solidity contract, like a simple Solidity contract that allows for voting. And as I bind the service to my poll application, the URL of the contract is communicated to the broker. And you're going to see here that the contract is going to be pulled on this Docker container, and then it's going to be compiled and it's going to be deployed on the container. And then we're going to get the contract address back. And you'll see the transaction happen on this side. So right now it's compiling. It's actually pulling the contract on the Docker container and compiling it. And once the compilation is done, it deploys it into the node. There you go. So you see, let's see. I think the binding was successful, but let me see what happened here. I believe that the contract, if I do CFM pull, you're going to be able to Okay, let's try to bind it again. I feel like it binded, but I think, you know, my machine might be just barfing on. Let's try to redeploy again. Cool. So you see this time the binding is successful. You see that the contract is actually created and there's an address for it. So if I do cfm pull, then you see that, you know, the same contract address that we see on this side appears also as part of the VCAP environment variables for the application. Also, you see the ABI for the contract, and this is what the application is going to use in order to be able to basically bind to the contract and basically use the blockchain application. So with all of this, now we can start the application. And the application, as I mentioned, is a simple polling application. I can show you that in the application, what we do is that we basically just read all those environment variables from the BCAP services environment variables, and then use them in the application in order to bind to the blockchain app. Okay, so if I do CFS start, pull, let's see, hopefully this is done successfully too. So while this is doing this, I want to go over some of the details of what you get when you do compile your contract. You see the ABI is the application binary interface, and this is the interface that the Web3.js library for Ethereum uses in order to send data and receive data from the Ethereum node. And Ethereum node is actually using like I think an RPC communication that the Web3.js library uses for communication with the contract. And the address is the address of the account that we created for the user on the fly, and the contract address is the address of the deployed contract, basically for which the ABI is returned. So with all of that, the application has all the information it requires in order to communicate with the blockchain application and with the blockchain network. So generally, like, because it's a node application, it takes quite some time for everything to be downloaded and for everything to be up and running. So I think as this process is going, I can take on any questions if you have anything. Otherwise, we can just wait for this thing to go through.
And Nima, just I guess just to fill up time since it's dead time right now. You mean those smart contracts? It could be any of the smart contracts that are available publicly right now that people have created, right? The Solidity ones,
right?
Like the one
so,
you use.
Yes. So the smart contract, basically, the one that the one that I pass in is the one that is written specifically for this application. But you can bring your contract to the broker and use it with the broker. Basically, any contract that is available on the internet and has like a public URL associated to it. Bring binding the service, and the contract will be downloaded by the broker and will be compiled and will be deployed to a node on the fly, and then becomes available to the application that you bind the service to. In fact, what we tried to do as part of the hackathon project was that we created a marketplace where we uploaded some of these contracts into a marketplace, and users could go and search for the contracts that they require. So one of the promises is that you don't necessarily need to write your own contract, especially because writing contracts in this Solidity language may not be as straightforward for everyone. So in case there's a marketplace, like, you can go and search for it and choose whatever contract that you require for the application, and then bring it and bind it to your application.
Cool. In terms of next steps, I mean, I'm sure everybody will see some of those when you submit the proposal, but can you talk about some of the next things?
Sure. So I think I have some of the necessary steps in the slides. So maybe we can just go back and talk over some of those. Let me just move this stuff around a little bit. Okay, so generally the vision of this project is that as blockchain becomes a de facto technology for trustless P2P transactions, businesses should be able to integrate seamlessly into using blockchain applications and deploy their contracts and their dApps in the cloud and benefit from all the scalability and all the good things that Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes and platforms like this offer. And that's why we've built blockchain. So as part of the roadmap in the future, what we want to do right now, the nodes that we create in blockchain are in developer mode, and that's because it's quite difficult to sync a blockchain node with the rest of the network. Right now for Ethereum, the size of the ledger is around 600 gigabytes. So if you want to have like the full ledger on a Docker container, it's going to take quite a long time for the full syncing of the ledger to happen. So for the hackathon particularly, we chose to go with the dev mode because you don't need to do syncing. But as part of the roadmap, we want to make it possible for public blockchain networks to also be integrated. Also, as I mentioned, the primary reason we're releasing it as a community project is we want to receive feedback from people and we want to see what the community thinks and whether this is something useful and how they want us to extend it. As I mentioned, we want to provide support for Kubernetes so that it can be deployed on Kubernetes and be integrated with Kubernetes applications. We want to support other blockchain networks. Bitcoin Cash is one of the targets. Also down the road, we're planning to integrate it with IBM Fabric. And also we want to make it work in production as a CF kube service and hopefully connect to the mainnet or the testnet in Cloud Foundry. With Cloud Foundry applications. Okay, so let's restage this thing, I think. Because, yes. So this is one of the problems that I have when I demo on my laptop, everything gets like super slow and then it comes back and then it goes again. So going back to the roadmap, I think these are some of the resources that I wanted to share. The CF extension proposal, I'm going to share it with everyone. And also we wrote a blog post about the project which actually explains whatever we did for the hackathon, as well as all the resources. Also, some of the repositories, these are like personal repositories for the code that we developed during hackathon that people can access. As I said, I'm going to share it with everyone after this demo, if the demo collaborates and things move faster.
And right now, the code for this is under your account, but hopefully, when it goes through the CF extensions, we'll move it to Incubator, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if anybody else have questions for Nima as we're waiting for the app to restage. If you're asking, you're on mute.
Yes, I have a question.
Is there any? Oh, go ahead.
On the right side, what does it mean? Block ceiling failed, waiting for transactions.
Well, I think it's in the dev mode, right? So the sealing of the block is basically when it adds it to the there's two phases when the ledger gets created. So when a new transaction block comes in, it actually keeps it in the memory and then it tries to append it to the blockchain and keep it on disk. And the sealing event happens when whatever data is in the memory tries to be written in the disk. So I think because, you know, like things get really slow and really wonky when I run it on my laptop and do the demo at the same time. So I'm thinking that the sealing is failing because there's something wrong with writing it to the disk on the Docker container at this point. But that doesn't prevent, you know, like this going through and creating the blocks in memory. So I think that's an error that we can ignore for now. And you see it's actually warning because it can't really write it to the disk.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question I was going to ask is, do you know of any similar workers? Because I remember when I first reviewed your proposal, I couldn't see any alternatives to this. So this is pretty much a first of a kind, would you say? Or?
It is, yes. So to the best of my knowledge, and there are platforms and there are frameworks that allow for development of blockchain applications. They bring up a node in the developer mode, and they allow developers to write the apps and connect them to the node, but nothing that integrates with you know, a PaaS platform like Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes, and nothing that allows this level of integration and this level of lifecycle management for the nodes. So in that sense, this is the first effort in doing so. Yes. But there are frameworks like, for example, Truffle that allows for, you know, blockchain application development. I think the main benefit that we get from a service broker like this is that it really gets integrated into the, you know, full process of pushing an application and binding a service in Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes. So as these platforms actually receive more momentum and, you know, more interest from people, and as blockchain becomes more interesting, I think the combination of the two could make it easier for developers to test and deploy in a real world-like environment.
Yeah. And I can imagine that a blockchain solution is not going to be just the blockchain application. It's going to be other applications. And those other applications, you're already using Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes to build them, so you can easily integrate your workflow, the blockchain pieces into your workflow and make that simpler and easier for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, we have maybe about 2 more minutes. Hopefully that works here. But, you know, I think I also looked at your blog post, which is really good. I reviewed it. It actually goes through all the steps too. So people that are watching this and want to try to get more information, the blog post includes that too.
Yeah, there's also a video recording of this entire thing. So if you don't get to finish everything, I can probably share that video with everyone, and those who are interested can have a look at it. As I said, generally it's a lot faster when I don't demo and present at the same time. But if you don't manage to get to the end of it today, like, you can look at the video and get a sense of how things work. And hopefully that gives you a better understanding of.
It's almost there.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
I have faith.
Let's hope. All right, waiting for app to start. Let's see. So the staging is done. That's the good thing. So this didn't proceed to finish the staging last time we tried. So this time at least staging is done. Hopefully the app is going to start successfully too.
You guys intend to have a Slack channel on the?
Oh, we do, yes. All right. So looks like the app is started. So if I go to pull.boschlight.com, you see this is the Ethereum app that we just deployed. Hopefully this actually responds pretty quickly too. Everything is slow.
Can you share the link of your slides in Slack?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll share the link too. There you go. So the app is running.
Oh.
You see, if I click on the, so this is a simple voting app, as I mentioned, but if I vote for dogs and submit, you see what happens is we get a vote and we get a transaction that actually writes to the blockchain with that number that we have. So now the value for dogs actually got incremented by 1 and the data is registered in the blockchain. So now if I open a different session and go to the same application, let's see, and okay, so poll.boschlight.com, the same application comes up, and this time I again vote for dogs, and let me actually write this side by side with this one. So you see that as I press submit, the transaction comes in and gets written to the blockchain. So if I submit it, you see that the transaction gets registered to the blockchain, and this time the value is 2 because I already voted. So it reads the previous value from the blockchain, which is the one that we voted first, and then adds what to it and write it back to the blockchain. So this is basically like a very simple interaction of the application with the blockchain, but you can do tons of stuff with it, right? You can write a lot more complex contracts and you can do the integration. One thing that is important is that if I read the results, you don't see any transactions happening with the blockchain, but if I write to the blockchain, you see the transactions happening here. So again, if I restart and if I vote again, you see that changes again. And this time I'm going to vote for cats so that you see. Actually, let's open a new one because I think this one already knows me. So, pull up boschlight.com. I think I still this time. Bosch-light. Cool. So again, voting for cats, making sure that, you know, I can just put enough spaces here so that you see that it actually writes again. There you go. And there's got 2 votes for dogs, 1 vote for cat, and any transactions happening on the blockchain. So that's the demo. Sorry for the little bit of lag. It's usually a lot faster than this when I'm not sharing my screen. But I think that can conclude the demo. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point and make things a little bit faster.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody. I think we're just in time actually. So thanks everybody. I guess we will reconvene on July 18th for the July CAP call, and look for Nima's email on CFDev for the proposal. Feel free to send comments to him, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.